Sometimes people say I can get a big head. Now, I don't blame my accusers for not understanding the enormity of the brain that lives within this skull, but I've caught up with an expert on another mysterious group of people called the Millennials, who apparently also have big brains. So these Millennials, what kind of beings are they?
Well, I wouldn't say they're beings. They're regular people.
People, you say. People with huge brains that communicate via telekinesis, right?
They don't really communicate with telekinesis. They communicate with technology.
I'm pretty sure it's telekinesis.
No, it's definitely technology.
It's telekinesis.
It's technology.
Well, let's see if we can watch some more and learn about these mysterious Millennials.
Please join me in speaking to and listening to Andrea Sullivan, President, Brain Strength Systems, and Nathan Gonzalez, a senior at Rosen College of Hospitality Management, UCF. Did I get that right?
That is correct.
Perfect. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
The subject today is obviously on a lot of people's minds, and that's millennials, who they are, how to deal with them, the impact they're having on our business. And so I guess I'll start, first of all, with you, Nathan.
Yes.
Are you spelling the end, are the millennials spelling the end of the face-to-face meeting? Is technology taking over?
That's a really good question. We all love technology. I know I personally love technology. It's really like one of my key things when I come to meetings and events, but I really don't think that's taking over face-to-face meetings at all, really.
Is he telling me the truth, Andre? You have the research.
Yes, yeah. And there's several pieces of research, actually. PCMA, the Education Foundation, actually funded some research that just came out in 2012, saying that millennials prefer face-to-face, and then after that, text and email. But yeah, so I think millennials are more likely to combine face-to-face with technologies.
And I know most everyone's conversant with the various generations, but the millennial generation is basically what age groups, what years, roughly?
Let's start with the elders are basically, it goes kind of in 20-year generations, right? So the elders about 1926, 1946, then you have the baby boomers, 1946, around there to like 1966, the X's from 1966, and then this is what's interesting, the X's actually have only a 15-year span because that's when the computers kicked in, and it's so interesting. So the millennials actually date from about 1981 up.
So they really have been born with the advent of the internet, I would, around
yes.
that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're comfortable, and forgive me if we talk to you sometimes as if you're,
no, that's
a laboratory example, but it's interesting because there are differences as well with your generation, and I think that your obviously comfort with technology has to be one of the defining characteristics. Is that basically true?
Yeah, growing up with the technology, you're surrounded by the technology. It was in all of our classes when we grew up. So it's kind of second nature, I would say, to a lot of us. And
so while someone from another generation might say technology is really serious, you look at it differently, don't you?
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely, I would say it's fun first, and then a communication tool second.
That's a big difference, isn't it, Andrea? Just
huge,
that orientation.
It's huge. And it all has to do, to me, with meetings in particular. What we need to look at really is that there is a new kind of learning diversity in my mind. So, the way that the millennials learn and the way that they work in terms of the meeting environment, and if it's a hybrid or, if we're texting or we have audience response going on in the meetings, that their response is they process it differently than boomers, for example, because our brains are different, and that's really what people need to understand, is that there's a huge difference even in the way that our brains are wired, because our brains rewire depending on experience.
So the impact of technology is not just this kind of digital behavioral thing, it's actually caused some rewiring.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, millennials switch tasks but much faster.
I wouldn't realize it if I...
to another. Yeah, you guys can go back and forth really quickly.
Yeah.
We're not, it takes us a little time. And then there's other things like, there's a lot of cognitive functions. Like one of my pet peeves is that people feel like, the technology is ruining your brains. It's not. A lot of cognitive functions are enhanced by the technology that you've grown up with. So visual discrimination, reaction times. You guys are better at ignoring distractions than we are because you've grown up having to ignore, So like that. So I think it's, there's a lot of information that people need to learn.
There are actual, this is not just a difference in time, there's actual differences in the way the brain's wired.
There's difference in how the brain works. The brain is always evolving, and
Right.
even within one person's life. So depending upon, like the traditional difference between Generation X and Generation Y, which is the Millennials. Generation X typically grew up latchkey children, to working parents, television, very passive. Generation Y, the Millennials grew up with a lot of structured activities, so to this day, you guys tend to like structure, basketball, band, all kinds of dance lessons, right?
I was the band nerd, yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
That was me.
chess club, whatever. And the computer, which is interactive, which is leading into what we see happening in the meetings industry right now with, the millennials really demanding a lot of interaction, a lot of collaboration. I mean, it makes it more fun and is actually better learning for all of us. And I think it's coming out of this cultural shift that has happened because of the computers.
So Nathan, I want to make it clear, you're a senior at Rosen College of Hospitality Management.
Yes.
You are going to enter this industry, is that
Very
that's your
shortly.
plan? Very
Yep.
shortly. So tell me, what are you going to do to change the industry to better reflect what your generation is looking for?
Very, very good question. It's one of those. It's one of those things you don't realize it. I don't think until you're kind of in there, and you. And I don't think it's going to be a conscious thing. I think that because I grew up the way that I did, technology is the center of everything that I do, and I think that everybody around me is realizing that that's the way we're all going, and it's just going to be a very smooth transition. I feel like, and I think a lot of the adults or the older generations around me will kind of pick up on that eventually.
But I've read that there are other differences with your generation in terms of, and Andrea touched on it, structure. I think networking, I believe, is something that's important to your group, is it not? I mean,
When we go to, yeah, definitely. When we go to meetings, big conferences like this, the first thing I personally look at is technology, but networking is definitely the second, right behind that. And so networking is very, very important, and technology is a communication tool. You really can't do it without that anymore.
Have you been attending these sessions?
Yes, starting yesterday.
And how do you rate these sessions so far from a millennial standpoint?
They've been fantastic. I mean, Twitter, the fact that Twitter's there, and now that PCMA started a new, the Instagram, which is great, and I think they do it at a lot of other conferences too, where I can hashtag a conference, upload all my pictures, and everybody can follow that and see what everybody else is up to.
And this is all normal to you, right?
Yes,
All
of course. Is it not normal to you?
I also read that the way the generations interact is important. That in the earlier times, an older generation would teach a generation behind it what it has mastered, like an apprenticeship kind of thing. So now I haven't mastered what you've mastered technically. So what can a generation ahead of you teach you? What are you looking forward to learn from them? If it's not about technology, where can they be a help? Mentoring, is that?
That is a very good question.
Mentoring? Are you looking for?
I think it's professional skills. We don't have a lot of that automatically. That just doesn't happen. Right out of school.
You can't Google it, so.
I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe there's a list out there somewhere. But that's not an automatic skill. It's something you definitely need help with.
And I think, Andrea, that's one of those things too that the generation ahead can share. I mean, how to service after the sale. I mean, kind of street stuff that you can only learn with experience versus.
Absolutely, that's part of it. And we always have to look at that there's a balance. We call it, it's like a ratio of the senses that are being used.
Right.
So the millennials have certain skills and a skill set that we may not have, and their brain is wired for that. And we have skills and skill sets that you don't have, and your brain is not wired for that. So, diversity, when we look at bench strength, for example, on a team, leadership team, whatever, diversity is always first, because everybody has different strengths, and each of the generations has different strengths. And I think that the clue for any association or any business is to build in that diversity of generation, of style, of career tracks and like that, and personality and behaviors, so that you have a little bit of all the different strengths.
And you see it, interestingly, from your perspective, across a lot of associations and organizations.
Yeah.
Are they struggling or not struggling, but working within this 2 or 3 generation workplace? And
everybody
young
is
planners
struggling
like
with it.
Nathan coming in and
Everyone is struggling with it. In the workforce, in the business world, it's very interesting because you can have a boss. All of a sudden, you get a new boss who's a millennial, right? So what happens if a boomer has a millennial boss, and then there's all kinds of, how do I
Chaos.
deal with this,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Or you have X's and Y's working together that don't necessarily mesh, and I've seen a lot of millennials come into leadership positions really have a hard time working with the older people under them, let alone above. So, and then there's different values in each generation. And I think, we just need to all keep learning about each other and respect the differences. That's what I feel, is that we respect and then learn to be teams so that each team member is encouraged to, be their best.
so I just kind of want to wind it down a bit with some thoughts that you might share with, for example, planners. When it comes to planners who are working with millennials, what one or two things should they keep in mind in terms of the workplace, if we haven't talked about it yet? Just
I would like to share something that Nate actually said when we first talked, which I think really hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of conversations going on about millennials, and a lot of them don't include and involve millennials.
Right.
So I think it's great that Nate is here to speak for his generation, and
Finally.
I think that's finally.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big points, is that your generation wants to be involved. Let's involve them more and more, and make partnerships, where we can combine the strengths.
so
of
listen to
different
them, involve them, and
generations.
engage and talk to them in the workplace. And Nathan, from your standpoint, in talking to planners out there, what would you say in terms of creating meetings that will be interesting to millennials? What should they keep in mind?
Technology definitely is a big pull. And if you've got a lot of networking events that they know that they're going to specifically meet professionals and maybe specific businesses, that's a really great pull to a meeting or event. That's the first thing a lot of people want out of school, is a job.
So networking for work.
Exactly.
What about networking for professional gain? Just to learn.
I think that's a little different.
Right.
Because I just don't think that they're used to that.
Right.
yet, and they're just not in the environment and the industry yet. So I think that's something that will come down the road later.
Great. Nathan, thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Andrea, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Andrea Sullivan, President of Brain Strength Systems, and Nathan Gonzalez, a senior, almost ready to graduate, and look for work, by the way.
Yes.
If you bring a CV with your resume, we can pass that.
Yeah.
Nathan Gonzalez, a senior at Rosen College of Hospitality Management, UCF.